Oh boy, here we go again. Another tier list because we're out of content ideas. Hi everybody, Calamity here with a 5-star weapon tier list video today. We're only doing the 5 stars because if I were to do 4 stars as well, we would be here forever. With that being said, let's talk about the tiers. If a weapon makes it into S tier, that means that weapon is amazing on so many characters. It ends up being the best in slot for so many. If you have this weapon, good luck, deciding who gets it, because it's going to be that good on that many characters. A tier is honestly almost interchangeable with S tier, meaning it's still a good weapon, probably will be for a bunch of characters, but maybe just not as many as S tier. And then we move on to B and C, which is also interchangeable. It means two things. It means that maybe that the weapon is only good for a certain character and not much else. Or the weapon is good for a bunch of characters, but the weapon itself gets outclassed by weapons in the A or S tier. And then, of course, if a weapon makes it to D tier, in my opinion, I think it's worth skipping. It doesn't mean it's completely useless. I'm sure you could still use a D tier weapon on a character and still find success with it. I just think there are probably better 3-star or 4-star weapons that can compete with it. That being said, also keep in mind that this tier list is an opinion, not a fact. I can't believe I have to point that out to some people. If you do not agree with what tiers I put some of the weapons, that is fine. Feel free to leave a comment down below. However, it is not fine to just start hurling insults at me or other people just because you disagree with what they said. Now let's finally start with the tier list, shall we? First weapon on here is the Aquila Favonia. This weapon gives you a substat of physical damage, which is kind of weird. If this substat gave almost literally anything else, energy recharge, elemental mastery, crit rate, crit damage, or even just attack percentage, I honestly feel like it would be a much better weapon. It does have a really high base attack. I believe it ties the Mistsplitter Reforged for highest base attack on a 5-star weapon. That substat is still going to be wasted on a lot of characters. I know some people that use Bennett will probably slap it on him because, again, of the high attack base, but you're gonna have to make up for the lack of energy recharge he's getting, that he could be getting from other weapons or whatever you're choosing to use on him, because obviously you're not going to be using Bennett for physical damage. The only other characters that I can think of off the top of my head that would want an Aquila Favonia are maybe if you're doing physical damage Kaching, but these days I feel like Aggravate is the new go-to for Electro comps, so you're going to see a lot more people building for Dendro and Aggravate kind of teams, and physical damage comps these days just aren't that popular anymore, unless your Eula users are still hanging in there, but I feel like she's like, like Atlas carrying the Earth. She's carrying the physical damage teams these days. And it's not like she can use this weapon anyways. Her signature weapon is much better. So I'm going to put Aquila Favonia in C, just because it still could be a viable weapon for Bennett if you do want to min-max his attack. And I suppose if you are doing a physical damage, main DPS sort of character that wants, they're going to want this weapon. It's probably going to be their best one. So it's not completely useless in the D tier for me, but I don't think it's that great. Next up, we have the Summit Shaper. And I'm just gonna do this honestly because there's several weapons that have this sort of same effect. So the Summit Shaper, the Reforged, I believe the Claymore is called, the Vortex, Vanquisher, and Memory of Dust all have the same weapon effect. They increase your shield strength, and then as you hit opponents with the weapon, you get a stack that increases your attack percentage for a couple stacks. I'm not sure how much it does off the top of my head. If your character has a shield, then the bonus damage you are getting is doubled. So if it gives you 4% increased attack, you're getting 8% now. This isn't really that great of a weapon, and it does force you to bring a character that has a shield. Obviously, if you're Geo, you get a shield naturally because of Crystallize, so it can be okay in some circumstances, but I'm just gonna go ahead and put the Summit Shaper, Vortex, Vanquisher as well. I think This one, the Claymore version of it, is a little bit better. Honestly, it's either B or C, because it can be better. It can be it can be a good weapon in certain situations, but again, better options exist. So I think I'm just gonna leave it in C. And then we have the Memory of Dust, which does the same thing. However, this weapon's a lot better on a lot of characters. I'm gonna put this one in A. So we just knocked out a bunch of weapons there. That should speed things along nicely. Next up, we have the Primordial Jade Cutter. This weapon is gonna go in the S tier immediately. For those that don't know, this weapon will give you a whopping 44% crit rate as a substat. That almost covers all of your crit rate needs, honestly. You could never roll a crit rate on your substats for artifacts and you'll actually still be fine. It allows you to heavily invest into crit damage without worrying about having to balance the two. And the weapon effect is it's just good. It gives you an additional 20% HP. You earn a attack bonus based on your max HP. So basically you're just gonna get a lot more damage. This weapon works with so many characters, it's insane. From supports to sub DPSs to main DPSs, anybody can use this. Jean, Bennett, Traveler, Kaching, Ayaka, Ayato. Like, this weapon can actually rival Ayato's own signature weapon. I think his signature weapon will pull ahead just a tiny bit because it has a buff to normal attack damage, which is what he does mostly. But the Primordial Jade Cutter is still going to be coming in pretty clutch. And I believe this weapon could even be good on a character like Layla because she is a shielder. We don't know what her stats are like yet, but if she does have a shield, most shields in the game scale off HP, so this could give her shields even more strength and give her a lot more damage while covering her crit rate. It's just so many benefits to whoever carries this weapon. You know, good luck deciding who's gonna hold this. You're gonna end up sharing this with a bunch of characters. Next up, we have the Freedom Sworn Sword. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in B. This is Kazuha's best weapon, and it can actually be a good weapon for a lot of characters that are going to be in reaction-based comps, which is going to be most of them. It's a really good sub DPS or even support weapon that provides a nice little buff. It is a team buff, yes, so you'll get the increased attack damage, normal charge, and plunging attack damage by 16%. And on top of that, another 20% increase your attack. So yeah, this makes it a great sub DPS or support weapon depending on who you're giving it to. It's honestly, for me, maybe even an A. A bunch of characters can use this. Now that I think about it, I'll put it in A. I think it earned its spot there. It's a really good sword. Next up, we have the Mistsplitter Reforged. This is gonna go into S. This is basically the better version of Aquila Favonia, because instead of giving you physical damage as a substat, the Mistsplitter Reforged will straight up give you a whopping 44.1% crit damage, and once again this can be used on any main DPS, sub DPS, and it's even good for Bennett again because it has the same amount of attack as an Aquila Favonia. However, at least this one has an effect that you can take advantage of. You're straight up just going to get more damage while having it equipped. It's also really good for Kaching. Next up, I always get these two confused, by the way. We have the Skyward Pride and the Skyward Blade. Now, the picture is actually kind of misleading. This right here is the Skyward Blade, even though it looks bigger than this on this weapon on the left. This is the Skyward Pride, which is the Claymore. This is the Skyward Blade. Assuming these pictures I'm looking at my other monitor are correct. This is the Skyward Blade, and I'm gonna put that in B. The Skyward Blade is a great 5-star weapon for a bunch of characters, but if this was an earlier stage of the game, then this weapon would probably be A, maybe S tier. In some circumstances, but I just feel like it's been outclassed as more and more 5-star weapons have been added into the game. But that being said, it's still a good weapon. It's still great for a lot of characters. I think I'm actually using this one on my own, on my Bennett. Nice energy recharge substat as well. Not much else to say, honestly. I think it's just that good. Next up, we have the Wolf's Gravestone. I'm gonna put this in S. Wolf's Gravestone is an amazing weapon. It gives you a ton of crit damage, and it's actually available on the standard banner, believe it or not. What makes it so good is that it can be used for both main DPSs, sub DPSs, and even supports because of the weapon effect. So you might be thinking, why supports? If you're not familiar with what the Wolf's Gravestone does, you hit an enemy or, a boss that has less than 30% HP, you will increase all party members' attack by a whopping 40% for 12 seconds. Now you can only do this buff once every 30 seconds, but you can either put this on if you want on like a Diluc or a Razor, and they'll get a ton of damage, and for Diluc it matches him aesthetically, but it'll also work on sub DPSs like Beidou or Chongyun as well. It'll give them a bunch of... Sorry, did I say Wolf's Gravestone gives crit damage? I meant attack percentage, my bad. But the weapon itself will help boost their own sub DPS's damage, as well as give you a team buff, and then again, supports. Sayu, Jinyan can also take advantage of this. I suppose you could use it on Arataki Ito, although you'd probably want to get him more of a defense weapon, or his signature weapon, of course. Eula can also use this weapon as well. Very good weapon. Yeah, lots of characters can take advantage of this. Doesn't matter what role they play. It's honestly a good weapon. Next up, we have the Song of Broken Pines. I'm gonna put this in... Honestly, it's a close call between B or A, just because this is going to be the best physical damage dealing weapon. A Claymore for any Claymore users, and I'm gonna put it on B because when it comes to physical damage, characters these days, again, very, very limited. You're probably gonna, like, the only three that come to mind are Eula, Razor, Jinyan. I don't think there's any other physical damage Claymore user that would want to use this. It is a very strong weapon though in that case. Unfortunately, not much else, and I feel like Razor would probably not even want this anymore because there's that overloaded team you can do with Razor, or maybe now you can do some, like, I don't know. I don't know how Razor would perform in like a Dendro Aggravate team. Probably not as well as like Keqing, for example, but maybe it's an option. Next up, we have the Primordial Jade Spear. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in A tier. Obviously this is Zhao's signature weapon. However, it can be good for a bunch of other characters as well. Raiden Shogun comes to mind. Sinnoh, if you weren't able to get his signature weapon, I feel like it could be pretty good on him. I don't think it's that good on anyone else though. It's honestly close to B or A tier just because it's only good for just a limited amount of characters. It's honestly like really interchangeable. I want to say B tier, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe B, but it's close. Next up, we have the Skyward Spine. I feel like I'm gonna end up putting a lot of the Skyward weapons in the same tier except this Atlas at this point. It does have energy recharge as a substat, which again makes it a good choice for sub DPSs or supports, but less so for a main DPS polearm user. I'm gonna go ahead and just put it in B. It can be a good option for a bunch of characters, but ends up not being the best. Staff of Homa goes, honestly, it's close. A or S tier? I'm gonna say S. Staff of Homa is basically like the Primordial Jade Spear, or excuse me, the Primordial Jade Cutter, where you'll get increased HP, and then you'll get an attack bonus based off your HP. However, this one has an additional effect where if you have less than half, you'll get another increase to your attack. That's mostly for Hu Tao, but it's basically a Primordial Jade Cutter in polearm form. You would think that the Primordial Jade Spear Cutter would be that, but the effects are different. Next up, we have the Engulfing Lightning, which to me goes to either A or B tier. I think it's going to go to B because it's a very niche weapon that requires you to use it on a character that builds up a lot of energy recharge. Now obviously this is going to be great for Raiden Shogun because she can convert energy recharge into damage, which is what this weapon does as well. But when it comes to using it on other characters, maybe there's a couple others you could consider it for. Maybe Shenhe, since you could build her energy recharge without sacrificing the extra attack while having her be able to maintain burst uptime, which could be a solid option there. But not much else, just because it's a very niche way to build it. It's very limited, honestly. It's almost like I want to put it in C, but... Alright, next up, we have the Skyward Harp. which is the only Skyward weapon to give you actually crit rate. It also gives you crit damage as well. And the other part of the effect is kind of whatever. You do like a small AoE attack that does physical damage. It can be okay, I suppose, but I'm gonna go ahead and put Skyward Harp in A. I actually think it's a decent 5-star bow. Gives you damage on both ends, helps you balance your crit rate, crit damage sort of thing, and can be viable for a lot of characters. So this is Elegy of the End. I'm going to put in S tier. This is like the ultimate sub DPS / support bow. A lot of characters can take advantage of this. Venti comes to mind. Kali. Amber is also another option if you're doing support. It can be good for Yelan if you're doing her as a sub DPS. Gives you everything you need. Energy recharge for consistent burst up time. And it gives you a buff to your entire team, which increases your attack percentage and elemental mastery. It's actually really, really good. Next up, we have the Amos Bow, which honestly A or B tier because there aren't a lot of characters that can use this. This is the best bow for Ganyu, of course. It can be okay on some others, but Ganyu is really the main user of it because of the way her arrows work. Next up, I'm gonna put Aqua Simulacra, Polar Star, and Thundering Pulse all in A tier. Now this is because each one of these bows is best in slot for the character that they were designed for. So Aqua Simulacra is great for Yelan. Polar Star is great for Child. Thundering Pulse is great for Yoimiya. It can also be good on a bunch of other characters because of the substats. So Aqua Simulacra, I believe, gives crit damage, so does Thundering Pulse, and Polar Star gives crit rate. Whether or not the character can fulfill the weapon's effect, and most of the time they can't, unless it's the signature character, or the character that was made for, it still ends up being a really good stat stick, and they do still end up getting some benefit from the weapon's effect. It's just not as much. Honestly, now that I think about it, I kind of want to put maybe one of them in S tier. Maybe Polar Star? Aqua Simulacra is also really good too. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put Aqua Simulacra in S because I feel like this is also good for sub DPS characters as well because it allows them to increase their damage even when they're not on the field. So Fish as well. Fish is a character that can deal a ton of damage while not being on the field. I think it's just good for a lot of characters. Tignari, of course, could also use this as well. The last bow we have is going to be the Hunter's Path. I'm going to put that in... It's very close to B or C. I'm going to put this in C. This might be a little bit of a controversial choice. It's a very, very niche weapon. Like, it's going to be great for Tignari himself, and that's fine. However, it's not going to be that great for many other characters. You can use it with Ganyu if you're doing Melt Ganyu, but most people opt in to do Freeze Ganyu teams, so it does have usage outside of its signature user, but not too many. And then I suppose you could use it on Amber as well if you're doing some sort of Vaporize or Melt team with her. It does give you a lot of crit rate though. Again, it covers basically your crit rate needs, so it could also possibly be in B tier. It's just that I don't really see a lot of characters right now that could use the Hunter's Path. Definitely in the future if more like elemental mastery based bow characters are released. Whew! Alright, we're almost there. Next up is the Skyward Pride. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in C. I think this is probably one of the weaker or the weakest claymores out of the Skyward group. The weapon effect is kind of whatever, I suppose. And I do think it still could be used in support because again, it does give you energy recharge as most Skyward weapons do. So it becomes a decent weapon for support characters. Again, Sayu comes to mind, maybe even Dori could use a Skyward Pride. Maybe Beta as well. But next up, I believe we have... I get these two mixed up. I believe the one on the left is the Sacred Prayers weapon. And then the one on the right, this is a Skyward Atlas. Let me double check. So yeah, the Skyward Atlas, I'm going to put in A tier. And I'm going to put it right next to Memory of Dust. Honestly, the Memory of Dust and the Skyward Atlas are interchangeable. They're basically the same weapon. They have... The only difference is one gives you more attack percentage substat, and the other one has more attack base, which would be the Skyward Atlas. But with the Memory of Dust, you just need to remember to have a shield, whereas the Skyward Atlas, you can just use it and be fine. The weapon effect itself is kind of whatever. I mean, it does give you a straight up increase to your elemental damage, which is nice, but it also has a chance to like summon this cloud that can do some damage. I think it's kind of, you know, whatever. But that being said, the Skyward Atlas has a very, very high base attack, making it really good for a bunch of characters. I think the only thing that would have made the Skyward S tier is if it had like crit rate or crit damage, in my opinion. But yeah, because of the attack percentage substat, that just means you're gonna have to work harder on your artifacts to get that crit rate and crit damage. But it's still a good weapon, and again, a lot of characters will enjoy having it, and it's just really, really good. Sacred Prayers of the this weapon has such a long name, I forget. Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds is what it's called. Honestly, for me, I kind of want to put this in B tier, but because it does have crit rate, it does end up being a good stat stick for a lot of characters. However, what I don't like about this weapon is the weapon effect. So you gain damage the longer your character is on the field. This means you have to be on the field for about 16 seconds to get the full buff from this weapon. Now, it's better to get buffs from your teammates instead, you know, depending on the teams you're using. If like Bennett's in the team, I'd rather swap off, get his burst back out on the field, rather than just trying to keep one character on the field for the entire time, like trying to keep one character on the field to build up this weapon stacks. It can be good on Klee though. I believe that is her signature weapon, since Klee does take up most of the field time compared to other characters. But yeah, it's still a good option for a lot of characters. Just don't expect to get the maximum value from the stacks. Next up, we have the Everlasting Moonflow. I'm gonna put this in C. Really good for Kokomi. Perhaps Barbara. Not much else, honestly. It's honestly very close to D tier because, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna put it on D tier. It's good to the two characters I mentioned for sure. However, if you want to build like Barbara DPS, you could just do Skyward Atlas. Just do that, or Sacred Prayers if you want. And for Kokomi, she already has a lot of good other options. In fact, Thrilling Tales of Dragon Seekers, a 3-star weapon, is probably better for Kokomi than this weapon because it buffs another teammate. So most people just use Kokomi as a hydro applicator and just support, right? So you just want to drop that jellyfish and swap. Well, when you swap with the Dragon Tails weapon, you're going to give that next character like a 48% attack boost. That's way more useful than what this weapon is going to provide you. It's also not that great, really not that great on any other character other than Kokomi and maybe Barbara. So I'm putting it in D tier. Next up, we have the, this looks like a sword, doesn't it? But this is the Redhorn Stonethresher or something like that. This is Arataki Ito's weapon. It does give you a ton of crit damage, and it converts your defense into extra attack. I'm gonna put this in, it's either B or A. I'm gonna put it in A. Obviously the other character that can use this is Noelle, because they both scale with defense and then they convert that defense into attack. However, you could still end up using this as a very strong, you know what, I'm actually gonna put it in B because it's not too many. You're not gonna be building defense for too many characters that aren't Geo anyways, right? So you won't be getting that much of effect. Very, very close. I'll leave it in A. Sorry, I'm being indecisive. I'll just leave it in A. I still think it's a really good weapon. Next up, we have the Calamity Queller, which is great for Shenhe since she wants a bunch of attack percentage. I don't know who else wants this weapon. It just could be good with Zhao, I suppose, but I'm gonna put Calamity Queller in either B or C. I think it's C because I think it's gonna, obviously it's gonna be really, really good for Shenhe, but I'm having trouble figuring out who else it would be really, really good for. I think it'll just be like okay for some other characters if you have it, but I don't know. Let me know about that one because I'm not too sure. I'm not a Shenhe owner, and obviously I'm not a Calamity Queller owner, despite it having my name. Next up, we have Kegura's Verity, which is probably going to be the only catalyst I put in S tier, because it basically does what I wish the other catalysts I put in A tier do. It has crit damage as its substat, so it ends up being a very, very strong option for a lot of characters, despite the fact that the only person that can probably get the most value out of it is Yaimiko, because this weapon gives you additional damage every time you use an elemental skill. Yaimiko can use her elemental skill up to 3 times in a row, and when you get the maximum number of stacks, you get another elemental damage bonus. So Yaimiko is the only one that can do this effect consistently, but that doesn't mean other characters can't take value out of it. Again, it does give you a whopping 66% crit damage, and while you might not be able to get the most out of it, you're still going to get increased elemental damage just by using your skill. It does feel lonely up there, doesn't it? I feel like I should maybe put like one more catalyst and maybe like one more bow, or one more polearm, excuse me, in S tier. But next up we have I am not even gonna try to say this weapon. This is Ayato's weapon, which I mentioned before. This weapon is very, very niche. I think it's only gonna be good for Ayato. Maybe it could be used on Ayaka, I suppose. But until we have a sword user that wants to buff their normal attacks by a bunch, this weapon isn't seeing that much use outside of Ayato. I think it's just good for him, and it can be an okay option for some other users. It does give you crit rate as a substat. It's not that great, and again, Primordial Jade Cutter exists. Next up, we have the latest weapons that have been added to Genshin. So we have Sinnoh's signature weapon, Nilou's, and then Nahida's. So let's knock these 3 out and we are out of here. So first up, we have Sinnoh's, which I believe is actually A tier. Whoa, this one doesn't have a transparent background. It's great for Sinnoh, of course, but it can actually be pretty good on other characters as well. Hu Tao being one of them because of the elemental mastery. Can be okay with Zhao, I suppose, since it does increase elemental damage and give him more attack. He is swirling all the time. I'll leave it in A. I do think the Staff of the Scarlet Sands is very close to A or B. But I do feel like with more Denjo characters coming out and more elemental mastery just being the popular stat right now, this weapon is definitely going to see a lot more use in the future, I feel like. But I do think it's a solid weapon. Key of the Khaj-Nisut. I'm gonna put this in C, only because it's I guess the new ones were just added very quickly. They're not transparent. This one is a very, very niche weapon because it increases your HP percent, similar to like the Jade Primordial Cutter. However, it increases your character's elemental mastery based off their max HP, whereas the Jade Cutter increases your attack, which can be universally good on just about anyone. Elemental mastery, however, not so much. The only character outside of Nilou that can use this is Kuki Shinobu, maybe, if you're using her to do some sort of hyper bloom or aggravate. It also is quite a good support weapon since it'll increase your team's elemental mastery as well. This could be really good. It's honestly almost interchangeable with C or D tier to me because I just don't see it being used that much. It's almost like the Everlasting Moonflow. The reason I put it in C is because it's not like Nilou has stronger alternatives. Like I do think this is going to be Nilou's best weapon, and there isn't like a 4-star or a 3-star that can perform better than it, at least not right now. And then finally we have Nahida's 1,000 Floating Dreams, and I'm gonna put this either in B or C. Quite hard to put it there since I pulled for it. It does give you a lot of elemental mastery, and it is great for Nahida. Isn't gonna find that much use outside of Nahida. Like, you could use it on Sucrose, I suppose, but keep in mind Sucrose already has 2 good weapon options. You can either give her Sacrificial Fragments for more elemental mastery, as well as, you know, a 3rd use of her elemental skill. Also give her Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers, which I've already talked about and why it's so good. Options are already established for, you know, Sucrose, and the only other character that I can think of that would want this is maybe Haizo because of the elemental mastery. Obviously, as more characters come out, these weapon rankings are subject to change. Some new weapons could come out and they end up being better than what's already available. You never know. Or new characters come out. Either 5-star or 4-star characters come out and they have some weird, niche way of building them. Then all of a sudden, some weapons that weren't really that great before end up becoming more useful. Or they could just make more of the same. Like if they keep making more and more characters, for example, that scale off defense, then all of a sudden Redhorn Stonethresher, is going to become an S tier weapon just because there's going to be more characters that can use it, for example, or more characters that want elemental mastery need it. Then you're going to see weapons like the Staff of the Scarlet Sands and the 1,000 Floating Dreams. Like those weapons are going to rise in rank as more characters come out. And that is going to do it for this 5-star weapon tier list. What do you guys think? Do you agree with some of the rankings? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.